Welcome to the Biscuit Book Club on Joy 620 WRJZ, featuring Marci and Shelly. Today, conversation will build you up in the faith and encourage you to do what God has called you to do. Brought to you by Simplify Hauling. And now, let's go to the studio with Marci.
Welcome to the Biscuit Book Club. We're serving up stories with Southern charm. I'm Shelly.
And I'm Marci. So grab your coffee or sweet tea and settle in as we chat with, well, sometimes it's our favorite authors, but sometimes it's just us.
And today it's just us.
So,
and Marci, I've just been thinking about how we're here today, and the Lord must have a sense of humor because you're a Southern girl. You're a Cali girl from California living in Tennessee, and I'm a Southern girl living in Alaska. And I think it's just so neat how you have just immersed yourself in that culture, and you're making biscuits on a regular occasion. And I'm up here making mousse and rice.
So I'm sure everybody, I get asked quite a bit, like, how did you end up in Tennessee? And it's because 5 of our 7 grandchildren and their parents moved here. And so we obviously wanted to follow that, even though I did grow up in California, and there's a lot of things we miss there, including 2 of our grandkids and 2 of our kids and my parents. And, a lot of times people think California is on the beach, but that's not where I grew up. I grew up raising sheep for 4-H, and then we lived in the Sierras. John had a sawmill, so we were kind of in timber country, and we loved it. But we feel right at home here in the Smoky Mountains. We're really thankful for the opportunity to put some roots down. And so, but how did you end up in Alaska? Because that's a bigger stretch than me moving from California to Tennessee.
Yes. Well, my husband came up here on a visionary trip with one of the pastors at our church, and he came back home and told the church it would be a great place to do missions. There's a lot of needs here, and a couple months later, the Lord just woke him up and said, I want you to sell everything and move to Alaska and minister there. He worked in the corporate world, and we were very comfortable in our church, and we were both very active in our church. He was chairman of deacons, and I was very active with children and the women's ministry. And we just, it took over a year, but we came here, and we've been here 10 years now, and we serve the surrounding villages, and we work with the indigenous people groups here, and we work with the elders to build healthier communities. We do church planting, and we bring groups in and do VBS and Bible studies. So that's how we ended up here in Alaska.
Now, was language a barrier at all? I went to Alaska with our piano teacher who had lived there right after Alaska became a state up in Fairbanks. And when we were there, some of the little kids came up to get an ice cream cone, and they just looked at me, and then I asked if they wanted something, an ice cream, and they just looked at me and then ran off. And then finally their grandmother came over, and she said, I'm sorry, they don't speak English. They are from an indigenous tribe that they had their own language. And so was language an issue when you moved up to Alaska at all?
No, they are actually English is their first language, pretty much now with the younger ones. So now the elders still speak Athabascan language. And I get tickled because if they're saying something they don't want me to hear, they'll speak in their language. I'm like, okay.
Then okay, this must be a prayer request. But it's kind of funny because when you and I met at the writers' conference, you were asking me about language, and even though we're both Americans, being not from the South and being from the South, that was one of the questions you came up with when we were talking, like, what have been different terms that you've been surprised about? And I told you it was interesting the first time I was at a grocery store and somebody asked if I wanted a buggy, and I was thinking, I'm not Amish. I didn't know that was a grocery cart.
Looked around for a horse and buggy.
Yeah, like keep your horses parked outside in the rechargeable station. I don't know what that was. So
yes, we call grocery carts buggies, and up here, if I say buggy, they have no idea what I'm talking about.
Yeah, like a baby buggy. Yeah. And then also food has been something that you and I have talked about, some of the differences, and having just had Memorial Day and going to the grocery store and not having any milk or bananas in stock because everybody was making, I think, banana pudding. I'm not sure what the deal is with that, but I think that's a cultural, like, kind of a rite of passage for womanhood that you have to make your banana pudding. That's kind of like a big deal here. So.
Yeah. So Memorial Day weekend, no pudding and no bananas.
So was that something that you grew up eating, banana pudding, or
yeah.
Do you have a secret recipe or that you're willing to share?
I just use the Cool Whip. I know that kills you. I use the box pudding and the Cool Whip, and there's no secret to that, but everybody seems to love it.
And then the vanilla wafers.
Yes, vanilla wafers and bananas, and I just layer that. But no secret. I don't use sour cream. Some people put sour cream in there too.
Oh, okay. So that's like up in the ante. That's like if you're wanting to get a prize someplace or make sure that your dish is empty at the church potluck, you're gonna slip some secret ingredients in there.
Yeah, I just think it adds carbs.
It does, but it probably cuts down the sweetness because just banana pudding and vanilla wafers and bananas sound awfully sweet. So, well, one of the things I did when we moved here, even though I was used to cooking and baking, is I did take a biscuit making class when we first moved to the Nashville area. I took a biscuit making class with my mom because I wanted to do something with my mom that we hadn't done before. And I thought, well, here's some gal. She has a book. Her name was Mary Ann. She's done biscuits, dinners and dives, I think. And so she has this book, biscuit making class. So I went. And to be honest with you, at first I thought, this gal has no idea what she's talking about. Like everything that I learned about biscuits, she was doing it counter. So instead of like freeze the butter, grate it in, don't touch it, it'll melt, like all these things, and sift the ingredients. And she's like, okay, you got to work the butter between your hands. You got to work it like you're counting out your money. Count out your money. Get that. And then you got to let it rain. She'd like hold the flour in her hands and let it like fall down. She's like, now if it's not worked through, it won't fall like rain. So you just got to keep counting out your money just like this. And she'd rub the butter through, and she goes, and if you don't have butter, you can use shortening. If you don't have shortening, just use an avocado. Whatever it is, it's just got to be fat. You got to work it through that flour, and you got to let it rain. And she was talking, she said, and biscuits are temperamental. They are temperamental. They have a temperament of themselves. So if you're having a bad day, don't even try making biscuits because it's not going to work. And if your Aunt Berta, if she's got a hitch in her wagon, she pulls up to your door, you don't open that until your biscuits are safe and out of the oven because they just won't turn out either. So, and I just thought, okay, well, and then she was like, and then once you're done, you get that money counted out, then you add your liquid in there. And it doesn't matter. If you have buttermilk, that's great. If you don't, you want to put some Mountain Dew in there, that's fine too. It just has to be liquid. And I'm thinking, I can't imagine any part of this turning out well. And then she's like, and then you lift that spoon up, you hold that dish like you're holding a baby, and you lift that dish up. You don't beat your baby. Don't beat your baby. These are biscuits. And you got to just turn and pat. And then you put that out, and you pat it like it's a baby. You pat the baby, and then you're going to fold and turn. and until it has a little bit of a bounce back, and then you put those biscuits in. You put a little bit of butter on, and you don't let anybody carry those biscuits to the table. That is your calling card.
Wow.
And so the whole time she's talking, I thought, well, these are probably going to be like hockey pucks. Like, I cannot imagine all this handling that this is going to work out. I bit into those biscuits, you could hear angels singing. It was the answer to, I think world peace would go so much better if we had homemade biscuits and jam on the negotiating table. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth on it.
We need to find this lady and have her on the show. She sounds interesting. I love it.
Well, it changed my life. I'm just telling you. It changed my life.
Is that how you make your biscuits now?
Oh, absolutely. And
I love it.
I just did a class with special needs adults at our church, and I have done class with my grandkids, and I've shown a ton of people how to make biscuits. And friends do not let their friends buy biscuits in a tube at the store. If you have to unwrap it and it pops, that's just not something friends let friends do. So,
well, I am struggling up here. I don't think I've told you this. I don't know if it's the elevation or what, but I'm struggling to get a biscuit to turn out. When I lived in Tennessee, Kentucky, I would use self-rising flour, Crisco, buttermilk. That's it. And I just got my hands in there like she did, and I use an iron skillet, and I roll them out, put them in an iron skillet, and they're touching each other. We like fluffy biscuits. But for some reason, I cannot get my biscuits to turn out up here. So I always used white lily flour. I don't know what brand of flour you use, but I can't get that here. The only way I get that here is on Amazon, and that's just too expensive to do. I usually do it around the holidays.
Yeah, that's something that you might need people to send you, because I think there is a difference for winter wheat and spring wheat. So the winter wheat is a little bit of a better biscuit, but if you're, desperate times call for desperate measures. So if anybody wants to send Shelly some lily white flour, I'm going to laugh. White lily flour, that's on her Christmas list. So she's been good this year, Santa. Please bring her some lily white flour. This message brought to you by Biscuits by No. So, what
brand do you use, Marcy?
Whatever they have. I do use a lot of that, and then also the King Arthur flour. But in a pinch, I'll use whatever they have, because I do think that it depends on where the flour comes from, and I feel like we're kind of in a safe area here.
Yeah.
So, but when I called you the other day, and I was in the middle of making my having a yogurt meltdown of my first yogurt experience, you were telling me that you were making mousse and rice, which is something I've never tried. I don't know that that's on my to eat list.
Yes. Well, when I first moved here, I was, I wasn't sure about eating mousse, but since I've lived here, I do know they are very clean animals. They're vegetarian, and I love moose meat. It's good for you. It's very lean, and so we make steaks. We make moose and rice, and my husband Jeff makes the best moose stew ever. So I have learned to love moose.
So do you have like a moose recipe book,
No.
Sloppy Joe with moose, or different, like a goulash with moose meat, or do you just substitute that with whatever you would use for hamburger?
Yeah, just substitute. Maybe I need a moose recipe book someday, but I don't have one now.
And then when you go to the market, is that what they have? Like, instead of chicken, they have and here's our moose department? Or
No. You can't sell it in the stores because it is game. So, no, our grocery store's pretty much like yours. Beef, pork, chicken.
Okay, so this is like black market moose meat then.
Yeah. This is moose that my husband killed himself and harvested, and it's in the freezer. But beef is really expensive up here, so most people will put a moose in the freezer, and that will last them all winter. And that's what we live on to say, you know. I mean, we still eat beef, but it is very expensive here. Yeah.
So, and then where in Alaska? Are you central Alaska, or are you near a coast, or Alaska?
No, I'm in the interior, so I'm about 7 hours north of Anchorage.
Okay. So under which state would that be? Like if we were in which state and driving straight up, which state would that be?
What do you mean?
Well, like if I was in Minnesota, would I drive straight up there, or if I was in Oregon, I would drive straight up?
You can go different ways.
Okay.
There's different ways. My husband has driven the Alcan Highway a lot, and he usually goes up through Montana that way.
Okay. So that just kind of gives me an idea of where you are. So, and then if he sees like a moose stand on the side of the road and you're running low, he could just stop in there and kind of like how we have fruit stands here. There's a moose stand there.
No.
So, okay. Well, and then I love the other thing. Besides talking about food, you and I, we also talk quite a bit about just growing up and how we also started writing. So your writing journey and my writing journey have had a little bit of a similar start in the fact that neither of us were readers, but we both became interested in writers. Now, do you think it was because we loved writing or because we loved stories?
I think stories. I grew up in Kentucky and a long line of storytellers in the hills of Kentucky. And my grandparents lived in Harlan, Kentucky, Harlan County. And we would go up there and just sit around and tell stories. So I came from a long line of storytellers. And I think that's what I fell in love with. And like you said, I was older before I loved to read. Mm-hmm. But now I love it. I feel like I've missed so much time reading.
I'm still more of an article reader, but I'm still an article writer mostly. I tell people I have a 750 to 1,200 word attention span. So that's kind of my sweet spot for reading and for writing. I do read full books, but it's not something that I grew up doing. I was always busy, though. I was always busy doing other things, and I did always love hearing stories and telling stories. And my grandparents were from Kansas, and they moved to California during the dust storms. But my grandpa, I used to love hearing him also tell stories. So what is one of the favorite stories that you remember as a kid, like you just couldn't get enough of?
Well, I won't say they're my favorite, but the people I grew up around would sit and tell scary stories that would keep me awake at night. And now looking back, I'm like, why did they tell those stories and send us to bed to try to sleep? They told ghost stories. And one night, me and my sister were in bed after hearing all these stories, and a bag of potato chips fell off of the nightstand, and she nearly clawed my legs to pieces. And my dad came through with a shotgun in his underwear, and my mom following him. They thought someone had come in the house. So I can't say I love the stories I grew up hearing. They scared me half to death.
Do you think that
What about you?
Well, were they superstitious? Was because no,
yeah.
There was a lot of superstition there. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of just old folk tales and stories and
Well,
yeah, it was interesting. What about you?
Well, my grandmother was from the Ozarks, my great-grandmother on the other side, and same thing. Like, she'd say, now, I'm not superstitious, but I just think we should be eating black-eyed peas. It's Friday the 13th. I'm like, okay, that's kind of being superstitious. Well, you can never be too careful. And when I went to Ireland, because Tennessee has such a huge Irish immigrant community here. Like, there was a lot of Irish immigrants who landed in this area, Tennessee, and so the storytelling that kind of grew out from here. When I went to Ireland, I could totally see, like, they don't say they're superstitious, but the fairies, Marci, you got to be careful because the fairy ring, and there was a tree that went down, and Patrick, which I think half of the people there are named Patrick, he's like, Marci, the tree went down in the fairy ring and no one wants to touch it. I'm like, oh, but are you superstitious? Like, I mean, why wouldn't you take that? That's good wood. He's like, all we know, Marci, is that there was a farmer who had a tree come down in the fairy ring in his field, and he took his horses and his buggy, and he went out to go get the tree, and the next day all the horses were dead. So you just never don't flirt with danger for the fairy ring. So, okay, so I'm not sure exactly where I left off, but the story of the Ireland.
I love your accent of your grandmother.
Oh, yeah, that was actually a friend that we went and saw in Ireland, but my grandmother also, she was from Arkansas, and she was the one who told me she's going to eat, she's going to have the black-eyed peas on Friday the 13th, every Friday the 13th. And she'd also have all these funny sayings, too. I don't know if this was in your family, but she'd say, 2 heads are better than 1, even if 1 is a cabbage head.
Oh, I love that.
And then a crowing girl and a whistling girl and a crowing hen always leads to some bad end.
Yes, I grew up hearing that one.
Yep. And if your palm itched, that meant you were going to get money. If your nose itched, that meant you were going to get a bill. If you like all these funny things, I'm like, I'm afraid to itch anything or whistle around you.
Yes, and if a bird hits your window, someone's gonna die. I grew up hearing that.
No wonder why.
So now if a bird hits their window, I look at my husband and he just rolls his eyes.
So in your writing, do any of those things come to the surface?
Oh yes, yes. I write Southern fiction, so I definitely, they say, write what you know.
Yeah. So I love that. Mm-hmm. I know for me, I actually did a recipe memoir for our family with our family's old-time photos and then some excerpts from my grandmother's journals. And I just love that because I think sharing our testimony as Christians and as writers is one of the most important things that we can be doing for the next generation, for a legacy, because our kids don't care about who gets the depression glass sherbet cups, but if we can't share with our kids how the Lord has taken us through the depression, the dust storms, and all those things, then we are kind of doing a disservice. So just like we're writers and we're storytellers, we need to make sure that we are sharing the stories that matter most.
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
So, and then because when we were talking about this at the beginning, having a podcast, you're the one who said, let's do a podcast. Okay. And then it just from one thing to the other, here we are. And we just thought that kind of tying Biscuits into book club is a good idea because there's a lot of things that go into Biscuits, just like we've talked about recipes, that also go into books. We have ingredients, we have themes, we have different tastes that we like, we have different methods, but in the end, it's still a great biscuit and it's still a great book. So I love that. I love that we have that.
Yeah, and you thought I knew what I was doing when I asked you to do a podcast.
And you were on your way to your first class on how to do a podcast.
Like, I know nothing.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm
Okay.
glad I seemed confident.
You seemed very confident. I had zero idea, no clue. Okay, so if people want to find our writings, where can they find you?
ShellySulfridge.com. You can sign up for my newsletter. I talk about Alaska. I talk about what I'm writing. I share other writers, and you can find me at Shelly Sulfridge on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay, and can you spell your last name because that?
Yes, Sulfridge.
Okay, like fridge, like
Yes.
the thing we see every single day. Yeah.
Yes, refrigerator.
So, and then people can find me at marciseither.com, and I have several books out, articles out, but the thing I've been working on that I'm super excited about is the Southern Christian Writer magazine. And if you want to download a free copy of the Southern Christian Writer magazine with Holly Varney as the cover girl, then feel free to go to marciseither.com. You can download there. I love that. And I really am super excited about who our guest is next. I mean, we've had this time to kind of catch up with each other and kind of talk with our listeners about our journey, but I'm really looking forward to talking with Sandra Bird about her writing and how it's impacted both of us.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear from Sandra, and she's had such an impact. She's such a wonderful woman, a mentor, and I can't imagine how many people she has mentored and coached along the way.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to the Biscuit Book Club. We'll be back next week with more guests, books, stories, and, of course, fresh from the oven biscuits.
Until then, keep reading and keep it cozy, y'all. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to today's Biscuit Book Club with Marci and Shelly. Be listening next week at the same time for great encouragement and a challenge for what God has for your life on the Biscuit Book Club on Joy 620 WRJZ.